The family of David Wilcock has broken their silence, and what they chose to say, every word of it, is something that changes the way this story has to be understood. David Wilcock passed away on April 20, 2026, near Nederland, Colorado. He was 53 years old. And in the days since, as conspiracy theories multiplied, as YouTube videos questioned the official account, as 500,000 subscribers searched desperately for answers, his family stepped forward, not with a press agent, not with a legal statement designed to deflect, but with something rare and fragile and completely human. The truth as they knew it, as they lived it beside him. In this video, we're going through every word of what his family released, what they revealed about his private struggles, what they said about his legacy, what they asked of the world, and why one sentence in particular, buried near the end of their statement, is the one that has stopped people cold. The family released their statement through the Boulder County Sheriff's Office on April 23, 3 days after his death, 3 days of gathering themselves enough to speak. They began simply, directly, without softening anything. They confirmed that David took his own life after a long struggle with depression and overwhelming financial debt. And they said immediately, before anything else, that they hoped his loss would encourage more focused attention to mental health care access. That was the first thing they wanted the world to hear, not speculation, not a counter-narrative, a plea for mental health, for access, for the next person sitting where David sat, carrying what David carried before it becomes too heavy to hold. And then they told us who he actually was. Not the author, not the YouTuber, not the disclosure figure with 500,000 subscribers, the person. They described a boy born on March 8, 1973 in Schenectady, New York. A curious, sensitive, introspective child drawn to reading, science, research, and questions about how the universe works. A boy who spent much of his time journaling, developing a vibrant, imaginative inner life. He laughed easily. He had a big heart. He loved animals, meditation, music, scientific study, and lemon cake. Lemon cake. In the middle of a statement about a man whose entire public identity was built around government cover-ups and interdimensional beings, and the disclosure of things most people are afraid to say out loud, his family introduced him to the world with lemon cake. Because that's who he was before any of the rest of it. A boy from upstate New York with a big laugh and a sweet tooth, and a mind that never stopped asking questions. They talked about his earliest curiosities, how from childhood he had a deep interest in telepathy, lucid dreaming, the occult, palmistry, and the predictions of Nostradamus. How, like many young people, he experienced painful periods of struggle and difficulty. That phrase, like many young people, his family specifically chose to universalize that struggle rather than pathologize it. They were not describing a broken person. They were describing a human being, one whose internal world was always more complicated than the confident voice his audience heard on YouTube every week. And then they talked about the work, the books, the source field investigations, the synchronicity key, the ascension mysteries, awakening in the dream, and the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce, the lectures, the media appearances, the YouTube channel, the community he built around ideas that the mainstream world mostly refused to take seriously. They acknowledged it all, and then they said something that no public relations professional would ever write. They said that some of his work raised concerns about misinformation, and that he was also a person who was on an eternal quest for clarity. Both things at the same time true. His family was not going to stand at the edge of his grave and pretend that everything he said was correct. But they were also not going to let the complexity of his public work erase the sincerity of the person behind it. He was always searching, always reaching, always convinced that the answer to the next question was just around the corner. That is not delusion. That is a specific kind of human hunger, and it drove him for 30 years, And ultimately, in the private world nobody could see, it wasn't enough to hold back what was breaking him from the inside. But wait, let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone speak with absolute conviction about the universe, about consciousness, about the nature of reality, and wondered what they were like when the camera was off? What the silence sounded like when the live stream ended and the comments stopped coming in and they were just alone with themselves? Because that is the David Wilcock his family is now introducing to the world. The one who wrote publicly about the divinity of all human life, while privately struggling to feel it in his own. The one who told his audience that the Creator is within, while battling a depression so deep and a financial weight so heavy that he could no longer find his way through it. That is not hypocrisy. That is the specific cruelty of mental illness. It does not care what you believe. It does not make exceptions for the people who have spent their careers telling others that they are loved by the universe. And then came the sentence that stopped everyone. His family wrote, "David's life will be remembered in a myriad of ways by many different people, because of the far-reaching nature of his teachings, and because he considered his audience a community." He considered his audience a community. Past tense now, but the community is still here. 500,000 subscribers who woke up on April 22 and felt the specific grief of losing someone who spoke to them like they mattered, like their questions mattered, like the things they were afraid to say out loud in their regular lives had a place where they were welcome. That community is now in mourning in a way that is hard to explain to people outside it, because they didn't just lose a creator. They lost the place where they felt understood. As for a public memorial, the family has not announced one. They have specifically asked for privacy as they grieve, and that request deserves to be honored completely. What has emerged instead is a kind of decentralized, global, ongoing memorial happening in real time, across YouTube, across X, across the forums and comment sections and Discord servers where his community gathered for years, people sharing their favorite lectures, their most meaningful books, the moment they first heard his voice and felt like someone was finally saying the thing they had been thinking. That is the memorial David Wilcock's family expected, because they knew what he had built. They knew that the community he considered his own would not simply close the browser tab and move on. And the family's final message to that community was this, written into the official statement they released to the police and to the world. His passing is a reminder of how important it is to meet one another with open minds and compassion in our hearts. The loss of a life can turn our focus to our shared humanity, whether we agree on life's unanswered questions or not. Whether we agree on life's unanswered questions or not. For a man who spent 30 years being dismissed, ridiculed, and fact-checked, his family chose to end his story not with a defense of his beliefs, but with an invitation to compassion, to shared humanity, to the radical idea that we can disagree about everything and still choose to care for each other. David Wilcock would have appreciated that. The boy who loved lemon cake and stayed up late reading about Nostradamus and grew up to build a community out of people who just wanted someone to take their questions seriously. He is gone, but the questions and the community remain. If you are struggling right now, please dial or text 988. You are not alone, and your questions, whatever they are, deserve to be asked out loud. Rest in peace, David Wilcock. March 8, 1973, April 20, 2026. Thank you for watching.